Who are the real no kings? And who's been acting like one?
Remember, we fight for what's right because it's time to go right.
Today on Go Right with Peter Boykin, we're going to talk about who are the real no kings and who's been acting like one. So let me ask you something. When you hear the phrase no kings, what do you picture? Do you picture freedom? Do you picture independence? Do you picture a people who refuse to be ruled? That's good. You should. Because that's exactly what this country was founded on. But here's where things start to fall apart. Because saying no kings is easy. Living like you actually believe it, now that's something very different. They shout no kings while expanding power, but who's really wearing the crown? So let's stop pretending this is just about slogans. No kings sounds powerful. It sounds patriotic. It sounds like something every American should stand behind. But words are cheap. Because when you stop listening to what's being said and start looking at what's actually being done, a very different picture starts to emerge. A picture where power doesn't shrink, it expands. Where authority doesn't get questioned, it gets normalized. Where rules aren't applied equally, they're applied strategically. And that's not the mindset of a constitutional republic. That's the mindset of control. Now let's talk about the part that no one likes to say out loud while they say no kings. You don't need a king. When you have a system that can control speech, movement, employment, and information all at once, yeah, you don't need a king. And you don't need a crown. When power flows through executive orders, unelected agencies, and back-channel pressure on private companies, yeah, you don't need a crown. And you don't need a throne. When the rules can change overnight and half the country is expected to just comply. Yes, you don't need a throne. And that's the uncomfortable truth. And folks, we're not talking about Donald Trump. You think, oh, well, we're talking about Donald Trump. That's what the left is saying. That's what the No Kings protest is going on. But they ignore what's going on in the past. Now let's walk around and let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice. Because this isn't theoretical. These are the real moments that Americans lived through not too long ago when, a certain bumbling guy was in office. Let's talk about point one, the emergency powers. When emergency powers were used to shut down businesses, limit gatherings, and even restrict churches. That wasn't just policy. That was control concentrated into executive authority, often with limited legislative input. Let's talk about point two, the vaccine mandates. When people were told their job depended on medical decisions. Oh yeah, essential workers. When federal agencies attempted sweeping employer mandates. That wasn't just public health. That was the government power reaching directly into employment and personal choice. And they even told you couldn't travel unless you have the vaccine. And I think they still make you do that. Point three, speech and information. When certain viewpoints were labeled, quote, dangerous and removed from platforms. I was running for office during the time. They wouldn't let me talk about COVID. They wouldn't let me talk about election fraud. I got removed. One of my channels removed from YouTube. They still haven't put it back on. I was taken down from Twitter before Elon Musk took over. 500,000 followers. Real followers. I had a big amount of people following me at the time, and they knocked me down because I was dangerous. And when discussions around elections or COVID were filtered or suppressed, that wasn't just moderation. That was influence over what Americans were allowed to hear, question, and debate. And point four, federal agency expansion when unelected agencies pushed nationwide rules. From eviction moratoriums to workplace regulations, that wasn't just governors. That was authority shifting further away from direct accountability to the people. Point 5, protest double standards, when protests were treated differently depending on who was involved, when some unrest was minimalized while other actions were met with overwhelming force. That wasn't just politics, that was selective enforcement. And point 6, talk about January 6th, the fallout, when the legal response raised questions about proportionality. When pre-trial determination and aggressive charges became part of the conversation, that sparked a deeper question. Is justice being applied equally or strategically? Or, that chant says, no justice, no peace. And point 7, surveillance concerns. When monitoring of online speech increased, when financial tracking proposals expand, they kicked us off of platforms. Kicked you out of Reddit, the groups, because you're in another group. Kicked you off of PayPal and GoFundMe and other forms, and people lost their financial businesses just because of their voting record, just because they supported MAGA or Donald Trump. That's not just security, that's the potential of a system that watches more than it protects. And our last point of many. Point 8, public-private pressure. And when the government influence extended into private companies, shaping workplace policies, speech rules, and platform decisions. And that blurred the line between public authority and private enforcement, and not to mention, or really to mention, the unconstitutionality of it. So let's be fair. Let's be fair, folks. Supporters of these actions argue they were about safety, public health, and stability. And yes, courts have stepped in at times. That's important because it proves one thing. The system still has guardrails. But here's the real question. Are those guardrails being tested more than they should be? Because history doesn't warn us about kings who announce themselves. It warns us about power that grows quietly. It expands gradually. And that stays because people get used to it. So the real question isn't whether we have kings. The real question is, are we allowing a system to grow that no longer needs one? Because in a true constitutional republic, power is limited, power is temporary, and power is accountability. It's not flexible, it's not selective, it's not permanent. And the moment we stop questioning authority is the moment we stop protecting liberty. So the next time you hear someone shout, "No kings!" don't just listen to the slogan. Watch their actions. Watch the actions, because you can't claim liberty while defending control. You can't reject tyranny while accepting concentrated power, and you can't preserve a republic if you stop asking where the line is. Folks, I'm just asking you, stay informed, stay engaged, go right. Go to Rumble, Go Right News, YouTube, everywhere, all those social medias. Check us out at gorightnews.com and peterboykin.com and gorightnc.com. God bless everybody. And we don't need no kings because we don't have one to begin with. God bless.
I remember watching people cheer, not in celebration of freedom, but in celebration of control. Stay home, close your business, don't go to church, don't question it. And if you did question it, you weren't just wrong, you were dangerous. That's where this story begins. We were told it was temporary, just 2 weeks, just to flatten the curve. But weeks turned into months, and months turned into a mindset. Governors didn't debate, they declared. Rules didn't pass through legislatures, they came down like orders. Small business businesses shut down overnight. Families told who they could visit. Churches labeled non-essential. So let me ask you this: when does an emergency stop being an emergency and start becoming authority? Obey first, question never. You couldn't just live your life, you had to prove compliance. Keep your job, take a shot. Wanna travel, show your papers. Wanna speak, be careful, because speech became the threat. Post disappeared, accounts silenced, voices buried, all under one word: misinformation. Then people started noticing. Not all protests were treated the same. Cities burned, businesses destroyed, streets taken over. And the response, mixed, excused, sometimes supported. But then came January 6th, and everything changed. Full force, full outrage, full prosecution. Violence should be condemned across the board. So why does accountability feel absolute in one direction and flexible in another? And while all this was happening, something else was growing. Quietly. Agencies. Not elected, not chosen. Agencies. Rules about work, rules about housing, rules about health. Decisions for millions, made by people nobody voted for. And only when challenged did some of it stop. So ask yourself, would it have stopped if no one pushed back? They shout no king, but power keeps growing. Let's stop pretending this is just about slogans. No kings. Sounds powerful, sounds patriotic, but words are cheap. Because what we've seen is power expanding, authority normalized, rules applied selectively. That's not a republic mindset. That's control. You don't need a king when a system can control speech, movement, work, and information. You don't need a crown when power flows through executive orders, unelected agencies, and pressure behind closed doors. You don't need a throne when rules change overnight and people are expected to comply. This isn't about left or right. This is about one question: do we still recognize when power crosses the line? Because when businesses were shut down, that was control. When speech was silenced, that was influence. When justice was applied differently, that was selective enforcement. And history warns us, power doesn't arrive loudly. It grows quietly, and it stays because people get used to it. So the real question isn't, do we have kings? The real question is, are we building a system that no longer needs one? Because in a constitution or republic, power must be limited, temporary, accountable, not flexible, not selective, not permanent. You cannot chant no kings while defending concentrated power. You cannot claim liberty while accepting control. And you cannot preserve a republic if you stop questioning authority. That's the line. And once it's crossed, it's not easy to go back. Stay informed. Stay engaged. Stay GoRightNews.com, PeterBoykin.com. We used to know what freedom felt like. No king, no crown. still getting shut down. No king, no crown. Tell me who runs this town. Main Street went quiet, signs flipped to close. Front porch conversations turned into don't get too close. Sunday bells stopped ringing, silence filled the town. Folks just stood there wondering how it all went down. They said it's for your safety, just give it a little time. But lines kept moving farther every single time. What used to be a question turned into obey. And if you spoke your mind, you might just fade away. It don't come like thunder, it don't crash like rain. It slips in through the cracks and it don't leave the same. No king, no crown. It don't crash like rain. It slips in through the cracks and it don't leave the same. No king, no crown. Hands up, look around. No king, no crown. Something's running this town. There ain't no king sitting on a throne, no crown of gold that we can be shown. But something's calling all the shots around. Yeah, something's wearing the crown. No chains rattling, no castle walls, but you can feel it when the silence falls. Call it truth or call it upside down, but something's wearing the crown. No king, no crown. Still getting shut down. No king, no crown. Tell me who runs this town. Different kind of fire in a different kind of street. Some folks got a pass, others face the heat. One side gets a headline, one side gets a name. Justice feels a little different depending on the game. Screens start flickering, voices disappear. Say the wrong thing, you won't last long here. Everybody watching what they say out loud. Truth don't travel easy when it ain't allowed. It don't wave a flag, it don't take a stand, but it's got a grip on this land. No king, no crown. Hands up, look around. No king, no crown. Something's running this town. There ain't no king sitting on a throne, no crown of gold that we can be shown. But something's calling all the shots around. Yeah, something's wearing the crown. No chains rattling, no castle walls, but you can feel it when the silence falls. Call it truth or call it upside down, but something's wearing the crown. Who decides what's right or wrong? Who gets hurt, who don't belong? Who's behind that curtain pulling strings? If there ain't no king, then why does it feel like everything ain't what it used to be? And why's it getting harder just to speak free? There ain't no king sitting on the throne, no crown of gold that we can be shown. But something's calling all the shots around. Yeah, something's wearing the crown. No chains rattling, no castle walls, but you can feel it when the silence falls. Call it freedom, call it breaking down, but something's wearing the crown. No king, no crown. No king, no king shut down. No crown. No king, no crown. Tell me who runs this town. No king, no crown. No king, still getting shut down. No crown. No king, no crown. Tell me who runs this town. No king, no crown. No king, still getting shut down. No crown. No king, no crown. Tell me who runs this town. No king. But something's wearing the crown. No king. Something's wearing the crown.